Thank you very much. Hi and welcome everyone. My name is Florian from Isurba. Today I'd really like to talk to you a topic that affects us all in one way or the other. But before that, let's start with a few more uncomfortable numbers. Let's talk a little bit about waste. When we're talking about waste, the first thing that comes in mind probably is packaging waste or food waste. And if we're looking at numbers, we see that every year alone in Europe, we waste millions of tons in food. And if you take on top of that all the packaging material, all the packaging waste, and then everything else that we see around us that eventually, one way or the other, leads in the bin, all the other waste. That's just one side of it though. In our daily business, we also talk with our partners a lot about another factor, recalls. Also this, alone in Europe, is an increasing number. Last year we increased alone by 12%. And if you take this together, we're suddenly not just talking about waste anymore. We're talking also about risk. Now, let me ask you this. Would you say that on the one hand, the waste and the recalls on the other side are isolated issues? Or could they all be connected? At our daily work with our partners globally, we say they are actually deeply connected. But the good news is they can be solved. But first, let's break this down. Let's talk a little bit about the types of waste and what it actually means. So first of all, there is a lot of operational waste. This could be labor, this could be resources, this could just be a waste of time, as we say in our everyday life a lot of times. But then there's the food waste, if we're looking along the food production chain, and also during that, we also see a lot of packaging waste already, but also the byproducts of packaging material that a lot of us forget to see. But waste is just a symptom. Waste is the end product that we see. There's a lot of small, little, or maybe some big drivers behind it. And if we're talking about drivers, we have operational drivers like unskilled labor, missing labor, just inefficient processes, for example, stuff like that. If we're talking about food waste, well, there could just simply be oversupply, right? Or missing demand. There could be inadequate quality that just makes it necessary to discard of some part of the product or just get it to a secondary processing process that reduces the value. Or last but not least, could also be inefficiencies in material. Inefficiencies in material in terms of we used the wrong material, we were advised on using the wrong material, or simply we just missed something. Could be something silly like mistake in marketing. But let's dive to some of these things a little deeper. What's actually behind this? Let's talk a little more about inefficient processes. Everywhere where there's an unstable process, everywhere where there's stop-and-go production, one way or the other, there's waste. We'll just miss something. We don't get the level, the process, the accuracy that we expect. On the other hand, let's look at this on the end-of-line process. End-of-line food production usually looks a little bit like this. We have label verification, we have case packing, we have the case labeling, we have palletizing, pallet labeling, and more than we'd like to see, it's not like here in the halls where we see this big equipment, where we see the fancy processes and everything works just fine and amazing. I stand there in awe and I could look at it for hours. Oftentimes, it's still a manual process. And if we're lucky, it is a manual process that's working. And if we're unlucky, we're missing part of it, or the person that's supposed to do it is busy with something else because you're wearing different hats. So again, suddenly there's not just waste, it's a risk because we still need to get this product out the door, no matter what we're producing, no matter what we're doing. On the other hand, let's talk about insufficient materials or wrong materials. We often don't really think about it, but the material decision that we're making also impacts the waste. If we're using insufficient material, too thin of a film, for example, often leads to breaks, to cracks in packaging or in processing, for example. And we've all been there. We put the wrong film in the packaging machine. We put, for example, the wrong label in the labeling machine, or we call up the wrong product across the production line, and we're in trouble. Luckily, in most cases, we catch it in time. Luckily, we catch that mistake before the product leaves the floor, before something bad happens. But again, it's waste. It's the rework, we have to get it all down. It's sometimes even the food waste, most likely the packaging waste, and of course all the operational waste behind it. Now the question is, can we prevent this? Let's move on to the Achilles heel, food production, insufficient food safety. In my opinion, that's really one of the blind spots that we're still tackling, be it a missing label, a mislabeled product, a missing best before date or a wrong best before date, an undeclared allergen. It, again, always means trouble. Luckily, also here, we catch it in time. Luckily, we catch it often before it leaves the floor, before it goes out the door in the truck. But again, it's waste. And suddenly, it's not just waste, it's risk. And now suddenly it becomes a food safety risk. Now, the real question is here, we usually can find it, but can we prevent it? Now this is where also for me personally, things get really interesting, because moving from finding to preventing is suddenly a totally different game. How can we prevent that? Let's make this a little more tangible. Let's go through a few examples. Let's take, I mentioned it before already, label verification. Label verification, in many, many cases, is still a manual process. It still requires resources. It's done randomly every few minutes, for example. We have usually a documentation that is on paper, so traceability becomes relatively hard. And last but not least, it is also unstable, because it depends on the person that's actually doing it. We try to standardize things, but we're all human. Now this is where 100% inline control, label control really comes into place. I've recently just visited a customer, and I actually observed this live on the line at a conversation with management afterwards. It was pretty impressive. I saw them at the line exactly do this. So their process looked a little bit like this. We're not going into details, but after every stop off the line, after every restart, quality had to come. They printed, they looked at the product, they took the film, they printed the label, put it all in one of these sheets here, one of these similar looking label verification forms, as they call it, check all the information manually, sign it off, and then they give the operators the all clear. Now, the funny thing is, I observed this a few times. On average, it took about 5 minutes. Now, doing this did not take 5 minutes, but waiting for the quality person to actually come and do it, that was the most part of the time. When I addressed this later with management, they were saying, yeah, you're right, we don't want to admit it to us, but on average, we're losing about 1 hour per shift of production because we're waiting. I said, but why are you waiting? I said, well, before that, we actually started production line earlier. Basically, we cut corners. But first of all, quality didn't like that. We kind of overruled them. And secondly, whenever there was an issue, it was just so much effort to rework it, and we just always got like, we kind of like tricked ourselves. So therefore also here, we were seeing this as a core component. That producer, to just do the math quick together, as you see on the wall here, is only if we're assuming those 5 minutes are actually realistic, and this 1 hour for the ease of the math, let's say they do 10 stops, so that's almost an hour per shift. They have a 2-shift operation, and if only they would produce weekdays to make this simple, or keep it simple, you would look at 22,000 minutes of wasted, of missed production, or in other terms, 367 hours. That's actually 367 hours of missed production because of such a tiny inefficiency, just because we're waiting for someone for a few minutes. And in the day-to-day, the big scheme of things, that doesn't look like much. Here 2 minutes, there 3 minutes, but as we see, it adds up. Now, by moving together to an inline verification system, we had 100% control of every single package in a line, no missed production anymore, because we were ready as soon as they pushed the button, and plus we digitalized everything, or we documented everything digitally for them. Now that was one of the big savings for them, eliminating waste. Now at the risk of missed check, when product does leave the floor, at a recall, the missed revenue and the lost brand image, then the effort or the damage becomes much, much worse, and therefore the waste turns into risk. Now, let's move to a blind spot in food production still, leak detection. Leaks are mostly these tiny little holes in a package that nobody wants to have. They're usually invisible to the human eye, but they lead to a reduced shelf life. They lead to things like spoiling products and oftentimes to customer complaints. With one of the customers, we converted to a 100% inline leak detection. They were able to, first of all, now document every single package and check every single package 100% inline, reducing their rejects significantly and complaints significantly. Plus, they eliminated the manual process, the bubble bath that they did so far, but basically giving them 1 hour of productivity for that employee back per shift. Again, we eliminated waste, but also we enabled them, because they checked every single package very early on, to identify little leaks here, little cracks there, to identify very early on the wear and tear of their machines that comes down upstream on a production line. Again, we didn't just help them avoid risk or waste, mostly operational waste, we also to them significantly reduced the risk. Now let's move on from processing to the material side. Materials often are, as I was saying before, one of the factors that just cause waste. Some are just there, we just have to accept it. When we consume a product, we usually discard the packaging. It's just accepted, it's part of it. Previous speaker talked about it. But also there's byproducts in production, material byproducts, that often are not even seen by end consumers. One of the things, and here is where new approaches like linerless labeling takes in, some of these byproducts, like the liner, that backing paper of the label where labels on, is basically a waste, a necessary evil, a byproduct that just exists, that with linerless labels can be not only eliminated by 100%, but also at the same time as a nice side effect. Usually they have more labels on a roll, so we have more uptime. And at the other end, we could save cost under certain circumstances. I'd like to explore that a little more with you. With a customer, we just recently converted from regular self-adhesive C-Wrap labels to linerless C-Wrap labels. So C-Wrap are these labels that very nicely shape around the package like a C. We enabled them to save roughly 23% on their annual label cost. And at the same time, when we would roll all that saved liner that they produce or save over a year, if we would roll it out, this would cover 23 football pitches. Now, on a daily, hourly production, that doesn't sound much, but 23 football pitches, we have a stadium right over there. Check it out, that's a pretty significant area. So again, this is a process or a quick change that does not only reduce waste, but also reduces cost, plus at the same time increase your uptime. Now let's move on to another topic regarding materials. Materials we don't want to have. I'm talking about forging material in food products. All contaminated food products by default is something no food producer wants to have. Metal detectors and X-ray systems are here, the devices of choice to prevent contaminations. On top of that, advanced X-ray systems and advanced artificial intelligence algorithms like anomaly detection that you see here in the background running, again, bring especially X-ray inspection systems to the next level. Because oftentimes you see something on the picture, but the conventional system just doesn't catch it. And that's where AI, anomaly detection, really makes a difference to identify things that the human eye sees, but the conventional X-ray system simply does not. Especially low-density foreign bodies are here one of the major improvements. And if for you, low-density foreign body contaminations are a topic, then I can rest you assured you are in good company. Beginning of the year, we together with Barilla had the challenge in the Good Food Makers ecosystem, where we together, Barilla and us, tried to push the boundaries of food safety even further and dive deeper into how low-density foreign bodies can be prevented more effectively. Surprisingly, and that's why I'm saying this here, we came to the result, we looked at all kinds of technologies with startups of all around the world. We came to the conclusion that X-ray, and especially X-ray that uses anomaly detection with advanced sensors, is still the solution of choice in foreign body contamination detection. So in summary, there's several types of waste. But waste is just a symptom to a much bigger problem. And in order to tackle the symptom, we actually have to identify and fight the root cause. And the root cause is the risk. There's 3 major types of risks we can address in food production. There is the risk of package integrity, like leaking package, mislabeled package, and mispackaged package. Then there is the risk of foreign bodies, of material risk. That could be the wrong film, that could be foreign body contamination, and other examples. And last but not least, there's operational risks. Operational risks in terms of stop-and-go production, unstable processes, and of course any other material-related risks that we can have. Now, these risks all can be controlled. That's the good thing. But it's not that easy. It's not a quick fix. It's not that one solution, that one technology. All risk points are along the supply chain, along the production chain, and there is where they need to be tackled and controlled. And this is where it gets interesting. Only if we combine several solutions, only if we combine innovative materials, where we combine innovative processes, like inspection solutions, like we talked before, together with ensuring an efficient material usage. Only then we eliminate risk and therefore waste effectively. Now, this is something that takes time and that takes a certain effort. And on the other hand, we have the consumer. The consumer does not look at our production line. The consumer looks at the product, the consumer looks at the product quality, and the consumer always has a certain trust in mind. He associates a brand with a trust. And for us, it's important that we maximize this trust, right? Because on the one hand, if we do this, if we get this right, we don't just increase our food safety. We don't just increase our productivity. We don't just reduce the waste, but we mostly increase our brand awareness. So if any of these topics are interesting to you, that you experience as well, I would like to exchange with you on these topics. Come see me either later here at the speaker booth or at our booth at Becerba in Hall 14, booth C55. All these things I'm showing you here are not just dreams. That's not a vision how it could be. We're showing all these things live at our booth. So if you're interested, come and experience them for yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Florian.